I try to keep it roughly within an hour. So let us pray. Blessed and loving God, we come before you honored that you have given to us this ministry of telling people about your love. There's no greater story we have to tell, but how much you love each and every one of us. That said, we need your help in accomplishing this ministry, so we're asking that you empower us, and maybe most importantly, that you open us up to be aware of other people and what they need and the right words to say to them when the time comes. Most of all, though, we come before you thanking you for the fact that you love us. Amen. All right, and I am going to, let's see, it's over there. Mute you all. And then I will share screen. Get that out of the way. All righty. If I do this for another 4 or 5 years, I'll get it right. All right. So basically what we're going to do today is we're going to do a real quick overview of the whole process. And it helps me to make sure I'm straight on something like this. Then when we get into the details of the major part of tonight, we'll be talking about the build relationship stage. So anyway, we'll look at our goals. We'll look at the overall goals of the process. We'll talk about why people don't love us and just come dashing into our doors. We'll look again at what the potential our church has to reach people. And then just in broad strokes, the overall process. And then that'll take about 20, 25 minutes. And then we'll spend the rest of the time, we're going to really focus in on what is our most important work, which is to build relationship. And we're going to talk about why and how we're trying to accomplish that. So our goals for today specifically is to look at our overall goals. So we know where what we're doing. Remind ourselves of the potential our church has to reach new people. Remind ourselves of the entire process and flow, basically the framework that we're hanging this week's work on. And then understand what's involving in building a relationship with the previously churched and never churched person. And let me explain that language. Previously churched are those people who, as it suggests, probably were in church for a good part of their lives, and maybe now they've moved to be near family or for whatever reason just quit going to their church. But they have the tradition, the background, they know basically what being in church is all about. The never churched person is someone who is just that. They don't have that background. Now, obviously, there's lots and lots of people in the middle. You know, they've been in church occasionally and stuff. But if we look at these two extremes, that kind of helps us focus where we're going. And as I've said before, we're not going to be asking anybody to stop random people on the street or go knock on random doors or to try to explain salvation theory or the Trinity. We're not asking anybody to be professors. What we're doing is asking them to talk to people and let them know what they know. And not even a lot of that. Most of it's going to be online. So our goals when reaching out to new people are not to increase attendance and budget. I just feel like I always got to emphasize that. I'm a small church person. My first day at my first church, and I was in my 40s, so I'm second, third, fourth career, however you want to count it. The first day at my first church, I was told that with luck, the church would remain open for a few weeks. That was the condition of the budget. Among other things, I chewed out the bishop over not knowing what was going on in his own churches, but we made it work. But so I understand if vestries and leadership and clergy, you know, the attendance and budget there are kind of on the top of their heads, and it's hard to move off of that. But it's really important that we do, because when we're focused on attendance and budget, we're focusing on ourselves. We're being selfish, and that'll be known. People will feel that, and that will hurt everything we're trying to accomplish. So our goal is to help people grow closer to God. And the good news is, if we show God's love, it's very likely our attendance and budget will improve. The other way we'll talk about really the exact opposite happens. If we're not showing God's love, then we're likely to see attendance and budget get worse. So our overall process, and you know, if you've been with me and you've been with me before, you know, you'll see this multiple times. I'm throwing out all kinds of ideas, and the last thing I want is somebody to feel like, oh my God, I can't do it all. No. The idea is to find the one or two things you can do really well and stop there. We'll add as time goes on. Maybe 6 months from now, you can add something. So do not overwhelm yourself and just stop. And you're never alone. In fact, the only time I will be upset is if you stop because you're confused or have a question and you just didn't want to ask me. So why don't people love us anymore? Why won't they talk to us? Why don't we have overflowing churches every Sunday? Well, part of it, and we were talking about this a little earlier, is we're not living in the 50s and the early 60s, even if many churches act as if we are. And the point is, many churches will put up a sign or put out a post or whatever and announce what time their services are and feel like, well, now everybody's going to come in because they know what time. Well, that's not what's holding people back. They know what time our services are. And back then, everybody was expected to be in church. And that's a very different time, very different atmosphere. And maybe that was good. We talk about that. But it's just no longer true. And here's part of the problem. If you use the word church now, for many people, even those who are previously churched, this is what they think about. They think about hatred. They think about over being dominated by politics, and that's both sides of the aisle. They think about the sex abuse scandals. They, just all kinds of. That's what they keep on hearing when they hear the word church, because that's what's in the news all the time. And honestly, I wouldn't want to be part of that group of people. The people that these newscasts represent or describe, I don't want to be in that group. Now, the good news is that's not a true picture of your church. The bad news is the audience thinks it is a true picture of us. By audience, I mean those who are not currently connected to a church. So what we have to do is we have to intrigue them. And I've fallen in love with that word. I think it's right on. We must intrigue them enough to listen so that we can talk to them. And that's important. Well, another thing we tend to forget, and if we think about ourselves, in any given day, there's dozens and dozens and dozens of things we can spend time learning about or thinking about or focusing on. And, you can't do them all. You don't do very many of them. You do a very tiny percentage of them. But we want our church to be one of the things people focus on. Well, we've got to take that topic and lift it up to the top of their attention span. So with all this negativity, what's our potential to reach new people? We have some, but only if we're willing to make the effort to reach out, to tell them about us, and take time to build a relationship. The good news is none of this is difficult or expensive or particularly time-consuming. Very, very briefly, and I have paper on this. If anybody's interested, I'll be happy to send it to you that you may want to show to your vestry or something. But about 90% of Americans believe in a higher power. Now, you get a few that are into crystals or astrology or that kind of thing, but most of them, if asked, would describe a God in some way. And about 25 to 35% have a fulfilling spiritual home. And that all depends on how you define fulfilling. Like, person comes once or twice a year. I don't think they have a fulfilling spiritual home. In fact, I think they're a seeker. They're looking for one. Now, you also have that other large group of people who believe in a higher power, but they're going to do nothing to deepen their spiritual lives. They're just not going to do anything. The bottom line is about 1 in 3 Americans believe in God, have some interest in deepening their spiritual lives, and would talk to us if they know the conversation will be respectful. think back to that the slide with the news reports. I wouldn't want to be in conversation with any of those people because I know I wouldn't be respected. But what this all requires is that we built a relationship with them that encourages trust. They got to trust us. So despite all these negatives, 1 in 3 people near you are willing to talk. Good news. But they're not anxious. They're very cautious. They already have an overloaded calendar. Don't start out by asking them to do something else. They're probably not ready to attend on Sunday. And the previously church, that might be a little different, but for most people. But if they're approached with love, they're willing to begin that conversation, begin that relationship. In summary, people have to go through these phases. And again, obviously, this is broad and general, and everybody's different. But they have to be intrigued enough to look at us. Now, again, remember, I want to focus on that previously church group for just a second. They probably know your building exists. They may even know the name of your congregation, but they just haven't been interested enough to take a look at it. So we have to intrigue everyone enough to look at us so they learn enough to know us at least a little, and through that discover that they might just like us, and through that discover they probably can trust us. Then they may interact with us, and that could be online, probably more often than not. It could be through non-worship events, or it could be on Sunday. Then they may build a relationship with us. That could happen quickly, but usually not. So that's the chronological order for many people, but the importance is actually in the reverse. And today we're going to actually start at the end of it, the most important stage, which is building a relationship. Because if we never relate to them, we have largely wasted our efforts. No sense bringing more people in the door if they're just going to come in once and never be seen again. And that's what happens more often than not. But really quickly, to remind us, the intrigue them stage 1, it's helpful to think of this as a funnel. There's this huge number of people at the top that start to enter the funnel, and it's very easy to get your post before 10,000 people. Out of that, a small number will be intrigued, interested, and out of that, a small number will keep looking at us. But over time, with relatively investment, some will connect. Not be in relationship right away, but connect. So look at it this way. If out of that 10,000, 99.9% never connect with you, that means 10 new families have connected. And I suspect that'd be a pretty good result for about any church, particularly when it has involved relatively little effort. But one of our biggest problems is discouraged leadership because there are no obvious results after a few weeks. Now, I want to stop here for just a second and point out how that too, we were talking earlier how some things are pastoral issues as opposed to intellectual issues. This too can be, there's a pastoral element to this too, because they've gone through the church declining, and they've been leadership through the church declining. And it very well may be that they feel like that's inevitable no matter what they've done. So when they don't see any, we say, come on in, let's try this, and they see no obvious results, it's kind of well, what did you expect? So there's a certain level of pastoral in there too. And the only thing we can do is tell them it takes time. So once we've intrigued them a little bit, then we interact with them, and there's lots of obvious ways, but I just want to point out some you may not have thought about. There's that typo. That's think about. I saw that this morning and didn't write down where it was, and I spent the rest of the afternoon trying to find it again. Anyway, just some examples, and all these are smaller churches. St. Thomas in Sanford, North Carolina sells cookbooks, and we're going to talk about how that can be an interaction. Holy Family in New Jersey doesn't have enough people to do regular Sunday school, so they offer what is called, and it's actually a whole program, Messy Church. I think they do it once every 6 weeks or something. Several churches offered to pray for loved ones on All Saints' Day. Lots of people have done special events, and not necessarily, and many times better not to be on a Sunday, or at least Sunday morning, The blessing of the gardens, the burning of palms, ashes to go, Lenten programs, those are just some current ones. And yes, we do gently make them aware of worship opportunities, our regular Sunday service, but also things that are a bit unusual, jazz vespers, Taizé. These are things people aren't expecting, and not everybody's going to come a running. And I wouldn't necessarily suggest you do them on Sunday morning, but if you do them on Sunday night or Friday night or whatever, that allows people to have an option to come in one time. They don't feel like they're making a commitment, so feel safe. And you get to know them a little bit, and who knows, they may come on Sunday morning. Not the next week, probably, but eventually. The point is you are already doing things through which you can connect with new people. So it isn't a matter of starting all kinds of new stuff. Rather, it is to think of those activities as what they are, worship, book sale, whatever, but also as an opportunity to make a connection with a new person. And that's something we don't think about. And the good example coming up is Shrove Tuesday. As I've talked about that, many churches have said to me, wow, we never thought of advertising Shrove Tuesday outside our congregation, or at least not doing it widely. So one of my roles is to help you build that habit, to ask, how can this activity I am doing be an opportunity to make a new friend? But that said, you have likely wasted your time if you don't get their contact information. Typically, less than 10% of first-time Sunday guests will still be connected to the church 1 year later. Less than 10%. And most of them will be at the previously church category. When I'm glad they came. Don't misunderstand. I'm not downing them. I'm glad they came. But the point is, we're not reaching really new people. They're new to us. And that's because we made no effort to build a relationship. In modern dating, I'm told, I have no idea, but I'm told in the modern language, we ghosted them. We treated them as if they were invisible. Now, I've never seen any research on the number who watched online or bought a cookbook or attended an event and didn't give their contact information, but my guess is well under 1% are connected to the church a year later. If they come to the church bazaar, for example, yes, they learn where your building is, but what else? And maybe they've smiled at some members, but I mean, what else have they learned that would encourage them to come back? Just about always the answer is nothing. So anyway, how do we get that contact information? Well, the key is, and if you've ever done a stewardship training, you've heard this, what you don't ask for, you won't get. And part of my version of that is be assertive, but never aggressive. Ask, but do not demand. And I know your first thought is, well, the church never demands, but I'm going to tell you a circumstance when many churches do. What does not work well, simply because it's too passive or too aggressive, is simply having a sign up, a clipboard with a sign up sheet sitting on the bazaar table. Website registration pages, unless you're directing interested people to them. But just having them there on the website, not likely to be a whole lot of you'll get some, but not a whole lot. A notice in the chat room as you're doing live service streaming. Number one, I don't want them reading the chat room while I'm preaching. But the chance of somebody going to the chat room saying, oh, okay, let me leave my name and phone number there. Not likely. The surprising one, and I did this for God knows how many years, is not a great option is the guest book in the narthex. Now, if asked by the host, yeah, but that can be aggressive. This is where I meant about we demand. Think about it. The person comes in, it's the first time they've ever been there. Somebody greets them, big smiling face, being very nice, and says, please sign our guest book. Does the person actually have the option of not doing that? Or are they being forced to do it? I would argue they're basically being forced to. I mean, true, you can say no, but, so the person, they've been in the building a minute and a half and they feel like they're being controlled or something. Also, the guest book in the narthex, and I didn't think about this until somebody, actually an evangelical, pointed out in an article I read. It's like looking for a restaurant review before you've even seen the menu. Not the right time. Now, my thought about guest books in the narthex is have them because the previously churched expect them, but Ask for the minimum amount of information you need, and we're going to talk about that more in a minute. Never leave it till the last entry is a long time ago. Yeah, I've been in churches where you glance at, and I always do, I glance at the book if I walk into a narthex. And, the last name is on there 6 months ago. Well, what does that tell me? That tells me it's a pretty dead place. So either put a fake one in, or even better, just don't ask for a date. Don't put a line there for date. That way you have no idea how far back it was. And me, personally, I find that people are reluctant to be the first to sign up for about anything. And even when I'm doing sign up for Sunday school or so, I try to always have a name in front so nobody feels like they're going to be all by themselves doing that. So what does work without being aggressive, I think, is variations of sign-up cards. And we're going to offer them options to just writing down. So it's more than simply the card. Make it simple. Minimal information, which is name and cell phone number. Now, we talked some this morning about churches that make a point of delivering something to the house or sending out a personalized note to a new person. In a smaller, I think that's fine. Those are good things. In a smaller church, what I suggested is, rather than having a line for that on the sign-up card, verbally ask for it and say, if you don't mind, put your physical address on the back or something like that. Because that's one of the things, particularly in today's society, people are really reluctant to give out. So I wouldn't do that. And we'll get to the children in a minute. Now, I do include zip code, as you'll see, but that's simply to discover if they're local. And the key is you want to make it convenient for people. So why haven't you? I'm sure everybody has had a chance where somebody asks them to fill out their information and there's just not enough room. The lines are so short and narrow and you just can't fit it in. People are likely to be writing this on their knee during the offertory. Well, make sure it's heavyweight paper. I like using a pastel colored paper, light yellow, light green, something like that. So you can still see the writing, but it's easy to find. The worship leader can say the yellow paper is right in front of you. Very important. Stress safety. Safety in the sense that you will never spam them or share their information. I was talking to somebody just a little while ago, and I asked them, I said, how many more mailing lists do you want to be on? And they just laughed and said, none. Well, one of the things we're afraid of is their information is going to get out there, so we got to make it clear it's not going to happen. Helpful to give them a reason. Now notice, I think it's important, how you phrase something is important. You phrase it by telling them what you're going to give them and then ask them to fill out the form. Most of the time, it's phrased as, please fill out our form so we may. Well, the first thing you've done is ask them to do something. What you want to do instead is say, here, we would love to give you something, but to do that, we need to have this information. An incentive always works. $5, $10 to the food pantry or the animal shelter or something, and you almost certainly have somebody in your congregation that does that anyway. They give regularly to something like this. Ask them if they mind having their donation have double impact. And then when somebody does submit the contact form, you send them a quick note that says $10 has been given in your honor to the food pantry. All right, as I said, yes, these are primarily handwritten on a card, but include a couple options, and you'll see in a second. I'll show you how it happens. A QR code. Just make sure it goes directly to the website sign-in page, not to the front page of the website. You want them to find where to sign up, not get lost or just say, hey, I'm not going to go to all that trouble. And again, ask for minimal information. Another option is tell them they can text their name to a number and the church will get back to them. Now, there's a couple different things you can do with that. If the church phone takes text messages, you can certainly use that. Or if the pastor's willing, let's face it, most small churches, if you have 2 or 3 guests a month, we're feeling pretty good. And if one of those uses, I can take 1 or 2 texts a month on my phone. That would be my attitude. Other people have different ones. You can also get a free Google number that you can use just for that purpose. These cards can be used lots of different ways, certainly on Sunday morning, certainly on things that are not Sunday, like Blessing of the Gardens, but you can use them for class registration and just, you can use the same basic form with very little change. The other big thing is most of us are doing live stream worship now. And I hope that within the next couple or 3 weeks, I'll be able to announce to you a way that you can get some easy training to very easily put announcements on your screen so that, say, for example, during the offertory, you have an announcement that says something like, if you can help support our ministries, here's the way to do it. But you also ask, at other places, you ask for their contact information. And I'll tell you right now, some churches have gotten in some money. I mean, not hundreds of thousands or anything like that, but, at least for me, a few thousand was really nice. Okay, this is when I send out the PDF, the slides to you, you'll have this, but I set out the form so you can print 4 on 8.5 by 11 paper. You can see all I'm asking for is their name and their phone number. Now, I do usually include the email just because, people generally expect to be asked for that, so I don't think that's a big deal. But I'm going to use the phone number is what I really want. And the same other thing is every once in a while, there are still people with landline only that can't take texts. So having the email gives you that option. And then on the right-hand side, I went through some of the things I've already mentioned, why I do things different ways. And, obviously you do what works in your place, not what works for me. Now, I do not have this on this one. I just noticed. So I'll try to find the other one and get that to you. But down right under, please include any prayer requests. I have an opt-out option, and I had to squeeze some things together to make room. So if people wanted to, for example, register for a class, but they don't want to be on to get texts, we give them that option. They have it anyway. They can always opt out at any point. All right, this is my all-time favorite way of showing these cards, making them available. This is in a large church in Greensboro, North Carolina, and they just took cup hooks, put them on the back of the pews. Now they screwed in, but you can also get the glue ones, whichever. And I like it because it is very assertive, but it's by no means aggressive. I mean, it's right in front of you, but it's not pushed on you. And sure, 90% of the ones that get gone will be for a note or for some kid to color on, but it doesn't take very many to be worth the cost. One of the things I like about this is the time you're most likely to see an unchurched person is at a funeral or a wedding. And we're not about to say anything about, if you want to know more about our church, please do this, in the middle of a funeral or a wedding. But if the cards are right there in front of them, they can do that. Anyway. And a special thanks to everyone. Let me stop that for a second. Let me see if I can get it to play right. And a special thanks to everyone who's with us today. I've got to figure out a way that doesn't start running immediately. The point is this is, I think, one of the best ways to request the contact information, and that's for the worship leader to say something. And I'll show you some explanations in just a second. But the time between the piece and the offertory, as the piece is, for lack of a more liturgical word, as the piece is winding down, there's still people moving around. They haven't quite gotten settled yet. And usually what happens is the organist hits a couple hard keys. But that whole announcement took 35 seconds. And it's a great time to put it in. It's also a great time because then the the guest has the opportunity to fill out the form during the offertory. So I think that's great. And I think the personal, remember what I said earlier about the guest book in the narthex being like asking somebody to comment on a restaurant before they've seen the menu? Well, by the offertory, they kind of know about your worship service. So if they want to be involved, they already have the information, whether or not they want to fill out that form. As I mentioned, the QR code and the text name to number. The text name to number, one of the most important things is if you get one of those in, you always should respond anytime you get any of them. Non-Sunday times, what we did, Ashes to Go, and I will mail this out, a couple of you already asked for it. We actually had a handout that we put together that had the prayers we were using, but it also had an explanation of Ash Wednesday, 3 or 4 sentences max, where the ashes come from, and the contact card at the bottom. Now, we didn't ask them to hand it in right then. They took it home, but they had the QR code, they had the website, they had the text options. You can use the cards for submittals, for raffles. I'll talk about that a lot when we're talking about the Blessing of the Gardens. Blessing of the Gardens can be a great time to have a few raffles and that you haven't paid for. You go to a nursery and say, come on, guy, will you donate half a dozen tomato plants that we can raffle off? If you get a no, I'll be really surprised. And as I say, ask on Sunday. The host can mention the form is in the pew. The worship leader also have some copies at the back of the worship area. So during the quote handshake line, if it comes up, the clergy knows where to turn around and grab one of the forms. You never want to not have it available. And this is the ask I just went through, and just kind of lays it out if you want to show it to a worship leader and see kind of what I'm talking about. All right, non-worship events. This could be the blessing of the gardens. It could be an ice cream social in summer. It could be, anything that's probably not Sunday morning. And this is the most difficult situation to do well, but it's extremely important because you're more likely to see people at these events than you will on Sunday morning. You'll have more guests come to an ice cream social than you'll have, if properly promoted, than you'll have on Sunday for a month. It's hard to be assertive on these without being aggressive, since you're not sure. There's another typo. Surely we missed that one. You're not sure who else has asked. So one way to handle that is an occasional announcement over the speaker. Find a reason every 15 minutes or whatever to make a brief announcement. We're about to run out of chocolate ice cream. And then mention the cards. Having the drawing raffle, great way to do it. Showcasing something, have a learn more at those locations. For example, you might have a corner. You probably want to do more than 1 or 2 per event, depending on the size of your church. But you might have a corner where you're talking about youth and kids or something like that. And as part of that, you ask the parent who stops by, would you like us to keep you in touch with what's going on? And it's certainly important on Sunday, but in one of these events, because of all the mingling around and when people start cleaning up, things just get thrown. Make sure you got somebody reliable in charge of collecting the cards. And if that's me, I actually photograph them before I hand them off to anyone. These are the most valuable pieces of information you can have. And they are easy to lose. Of course, online and social media. Again, have a page on your website for people to sign up, minimal information. I know I keep saying that, but the atmosphere in the last 5-10 years has changed so much. And and I've seen it, that picture I showed you of the cup hooks holding the forms, I went to the pastor, who's a friend of mine, and I pointed out what he'd done. It asked for the kids' names and ages. That's beyond creepy nowadays. But you could have a box with an open-ended question. What other information would you like to share, or something like that? Find a reason for people to respond to you. Now, I'm talking here online and social media. We're not in physical connection, but you can ask people for prayers, particularly around like All Saints Day or the Blue Christmas, special times, but in any time. Also, make sure when they respond, you get the information you want from them, and you always respond to them. Giveaways are great. Questions are much better than statements. So any kind of question is good. Polls are great. You got a Lenten series coming. You got time for a Lenten series coming up that you may not have planned. Well, you could put out a poll asking which Lenten topics would the people like to hear about. And you might list 3 or 4 possibilities and a blank room for other ideas. And then you keep them informed. Even if their idea isn't chosen, you keep them informed. The Learn More can work online as well, as I mentioned it a moment ago, at non-worship events. You can ask a question wondering what Godly Play is. Godly Play is a children's program. You can phrase a question about some of your social ministries, about just about anything. You mention a few things about it, maybe show a photo, but then you offer to send them the upcoming schedule. If they'll give you their contact information, you will send them the upcoming information about events, topics, that kind of thing. The issue is that most people, if they do this at all, they just tell people to drop a comment or a message on Facebook or wherever. They don't give you any information. Facebook does not want you to get that information, because if you get the phone number and start texting with them, you're not using Facebook. Facebook wants you to use Facebook. But you can message one at a time, but do you really want to, as your guest list increases, have to send out individual messages? You can group them. Facebook will allow you to group them, but there's a limit to how many you can put. So, we want to get the information the way we need it. The point is, you're doing things worth talking about. You're doing things people want to know about. So ask yourselves, what are they? And then ask yourselves, how can we share them? I kept on saying use a form. This is the Jot form that I typically use. You all registered on Jot form. And this would be what people would typically see on their screen. I like it because, well, number one, it's free. Number two, it's easy. But number 3, it downloads in an Excel file. So if you wanted to, or somebody at the church wanted to keep attendance, or did this people ever respond, that kind of notes, you can do it real easily. You'll notice there at the bottom, I did add on this one, we promise not to spam you or share your information. If you want to opt out, please check below. So you can have that. Now, I like these, although it takes an extra step for them to fill them out. Some people don't like them doing that, but it's the only way I've found something. It doesn't necessarily have to be Jot form, but something along these lines to get the information we want. But as we're doing things, make them interesting. I mentioned the Lenten program. Well, look at these 2 ads. Which one are you going to pay attention? Are you going to notice, stop, scrolling through Facebook or whatever, and ask, what is this all about? It could be the exact same program. It's just presented differently. It really was funny, and I don't have a copy of this. I'll have to try to get it again. But the passage in Sunday school on Sunday, in the adult Sunday school, was a woman caught in adultery. And when the email about it came out, it said the name, our Lutheran Church of Our Father caught in adultery. That's what you saw. Well, you better believe everybody read that. But most of the time, we announce things in such a boring way. Bible study, Sunday, 9:30 a.m. I'm going to sleep on that. I mean, I have no reason to come. I mean, it doesn't give me a reason to show up. All right, we have their attention, we have their contact information. What do? We communicate frequently, but we don't spam. Think about this as a new person at work or in your neighborhood. That friendly conversation. But the goal is to tell your church's story. What we want them is, after we've sent them texts for a period of time, they know something about the church. If they were asked, they could tell the church's story to some extent. What we're basically trying to do is tell them who you are rather than that negative image I mentioned way back when. Now, my recommendation on how to get it done is texting, and that's for two reasons. First of all, a text will be glanced at a minimum of 90% of time. And if you're really good and really lucky, you'll get 20% on emails. There's lots and lots and lots of research on that. I limit it to one per week, except for special times like Holy Week. And I think if you get in a pattern, they know on Friday, they're probably going to get a text from you. It won't feel like spam. I do think it's important, if you want to use texting for your whole congregation, have a separate list for the new people, because the members are going to get a text that says the vestry meetings is coming Saturday, or please come help on the workday. Well, that's not what we want to be sending to somebody who's only knows us online, hasn't even been in the church yet. That's going to discourage them. You don't have to worry about what to say. There's lots of stuff out there you can use without having to invent. If you say, well, my church doesn't have that much going on, well, there's lots of stuff to be used. TriTank has a whole series of great videos, little 2.5 minute videos. This What is the Episcopal Church is one I've always recommend being used maybe 3 times a year, so that newer people, we were talking about this earlier, how in most Episcopal churches, the large majority did not grow up Episcopalian. Try to stay away from just highlighting calendar events. You don't want to just be sending them the weekly calendar. Again, that's just not interesting. And lots of times you can post or add the same information as you have on the text. So it doesn't take any more time. The goal remains to intrigue and inform, but do not get discouraged if you don't start getting responses. Now, you might occasionally ask for a response, such as, is there anything you'd like us to pray for? But more, our point is to stay in their attention span, not necessarily, we can't wait to start a conversation. That's what we want, but we're not expecting that to happen very quickly. And I won't take time on this, but if you want to look when I send it out, these are some of the texts. The thing on the upper left, the percentage first name, that just tells the system to put the person's first name in there. So it's very personal. How do you do it? It's really pretty easy. And I'll talk about how I can help you in just a minute. But I would strongly recommend you get a texting service. Maybe if you only got 1, 2, or 3 people, you can send them out individually. But our goal is to have so many, you have too many to send out individually. And the system like that allows you to do the things like put their name in, to put in a web link without using up all your 140 characters. It lets you schedule your work. And we'll talk about that, how important that is in just a second. Keep track, all those kind of things. Now, if you have an electronic giving system such as Tidely, some of them also include texting. The bad news is, and I have not checked with Tidely recently, but many of them are one way only. You can text to the person, but only about donations. You want to be able to respond. You want them to respond. Like I say, you may not get a lot of response, but you want that possibility there. I begin by looking at calendars, your church certainly, but USA, Episcopal, whatever. And then usually if I can, I'll rough out ideas a few weeks in advance, just a couple words about what that week's text might be about, and then refine them as we get closer. I like to send Friday morning or Saturday, unless there's something going on earlier in the week. Obviously, for Ash Wednesday, I'd send out a reminder on Monday or Tuesday. Church in New Jersey has a Monday night program, and we don't focus on that every time, but about once a month, once every 6 weeks, we'll send something out on Sunday reminding them that the Monday program is there. So how can I help you? Well, this is my joy. This is my ministry. And, I am blessed that Shirley supports me in it. And my joy is in your success. And I can tell you, if you want, I can start listing churches that have had results. Not explosions, but steady increases. And although a larger church with resources, if they're willing to contribute $5 to $10 a month, great. But I'm not asking for it, and I ask nothing of smaller churches. My contract is with simple texting. And when I work with you, if anybody responds with a simple question like, what time is the event? I'll respond, I won't bother you. But if it's something programmatic or pastoral, I'll immediately send it on to you. And you do get these. Every once in a while, I'll get one back that says, by the way, I'm in the hospital. I send that right on to the clergy. I make sure they get it that moment. And what I do is generally I'll look at your Facebook page, your website, as well as any conversations we've had, and draft a text that you approve, the church approves, before it's sent. Now, I believe the way to begin, and this is a change over the last 6 months for me, is make a list of every contact you have received in the last year or longer. And we will send a text to them. And it will basically say, say somewhere, has not been doing a good job communicating. We will now be sending out regular texts, something, some phrase like that. And a good number will opt out and say, I don't want to hear any more from you. But there'll be a percentage who appreciate it. And the way I look at it is, if I send out 100 to people I'm not currently in contact with, and only 10% stay in touch, well, that's 10% more that's 10 families more than I had. So, and again, for relatively little effort. And most of the effort is what I do. So it's, it's even easier on you. The Reverend Dan Wall will be assisting me. So if you hear from him at some point, that's what that's all about. If you're at all interested, just want to chat about that, see what it's all about, just let me know. So in a few cases, texting will not work, mainly when they have only a landline. So yes, definitely follow up with email if that's the best you have. At some point, you want to use a non-open-ended question. When can we have coffee? Would you like to have coffee is fairly easy to ignore. When would you like to have coffee is better, but even a better option is something like, are you available for coffee next Tuesday morning? It's pretty impolite not to respond to that. And anytime a child attends, whether they're in worship, you have nursery, Sunday school, whatever, focus on them. The general teaching is, if the father is happy, they might show back up. The woman is happy, there's a pretty good chance they'll show up. If the kid is happy, they're going to be back. So, we want to stay in touch with them. So send him a quick note. Again, that means getting the address. But most of the time, if you explain why, that's not a problem. But if they hesitate, back off. Do not be aggressive. Finally, respond. Think of it this way. If somebody's walking down the hall and passes you and saying hello, do you wait 2 days to say hello back? Well, that's what we do, except sometimes we don't get it done in 2 days. When they submit a card, they do anything like that, they're saying hello. Politeness says we should get back to them fairly quickly. And it can be very short. I just sent out a couple for a church. It just went out because they just sent me the information, but it should have been sooner. Just thank you for being with us. Frankly, I don't want to hear this takes too much time, and I'm sorry if that upsets somebody. But, if you're a really slow typer, it'll take you 30 seconds. And the chances of you having 10 to guess a week is pretty small. But even if it is, that's 5 minutes. If you get overwhelmed, get on your knees and thank God for that. Don't complain. You can do it immediately. That's what I like about having a system that you can schedule. So let's say a new person comes in on Sunday morning, sending them a text on noon on Sunday, before they're even home. The evangelicals will do that, and they'll encourage it. I think it's a bit aggressive. But you can write it at noon and schedule to send out at 7 o'clock at night. To me, that feels better. We're being assertive, but we're not being aggressive. By law, simple texting or any of those must offer an an opt-out option after they sign up. They actually get a text before your text saying, do you want to receive from this group? And there's always one on the bottom of every text. There's, if you want to opt out here. But, this is, again, an evolution of thought for me. If somebody gets annoyed because I send them a message about All Saints Day, they're not going to stay around anyway. I ain't going to worry about it, Finally, and most important, pray. Pray not that they be changed so they attend, but pray that we be changed so we can do God's ministry the way God wants us to. All right, if you'll unmute, and we'll see if you have any questions or comments. Boy, I did bring that in really close to an hour, didn't I? I'm proud of myself.
I'll jump in. Is there any way to use a Google phone number for this texting?
Yeah.
Because can you put in there's no way, you'd have to say respond stop on everyone, because it wouldn't be an automatic system for an opt-out.
I've not used it. I'm told it can be done. I will try to run down the person who told me he's doing it that way and ask him how he's doing it.
Yeah, we have Google for nonprofits. So
I don't think they're necessarily, I think the Google phone is open to anybody.
Yeah, I would have to be looking and seeing whether or not
Google phone's not going to offer bulk texting.
No.
It's not like simple texting. What Google phone's going to do is give you the ability to add a dedicated text number that people can use for personal back and forth.
Yeah.
And so you don't need the opt-out on it. It just gives you, a way to add a phone number to your phone that's not your primary phone number.
Yeah. So
and all we'd be using it for is to get that initial one. If we gave them that text your name to this number, then we'll be in touch. Everything after that comes out of the system.
Yeah.
It's just the initial contact. So the fact that one group is not not going to.
So for example, I've switched it. Oh no, actually I still use a Google phone. I use it when I moved here, so I would have a local number, but it still runs on my main phone. Just because people here, it's a real small church and they're not used to dialing the area code, and I felt like they wanted a local number to make me feel local. So,
are you using the nonprofit suite?
I use the nonprofit suite, but I don't use Google Voice within it, because you have to pay additional for Google Voice inside of nonprofits.
Yep.
So you can use Google Voice separately off of the Gmail address and get a private.
And I would be concerned about that, because then it's outside the organizational purview, and how do you? I mean, it's just my thought of like.
Yeah.
I am dealing right now that they started a personal Google email connected to the church, and now we have Google for nonprofit, and so I've got two that I'm already trying to control, and so. Anyway,
yeah.
Okay.
Well, like I say, if I were doing this now from a small church, a very small church, I'd probably just use my personal number. I mean, if the guest learns my personal, I want them to know my personal number. Yep. To get a hold of me as pastor. So that wouldn't bother me. It bothers some people. Some will have good reason not to want to do it. But this is where I'm talking about is where we say, text your first name to this number. And then we get their number off of that. When they text us, we get their number. And all other communications can go through the system. But like I say, I'd be overjoyed to be overwhelmed. But the other nice thing about that is I would get the information, and sometimes if it goes to the church office, maybe I get it, maybe it gets lost. Again, working mainly with volunteers, maybe it gets lost, maybe I get it, maybe I don't. So, but that's me.
Back on your texting response slide, you had the line for emoji, and I didn't catch. Are you pro emoji, for emojis, or against emoji? Was that used as
part of the text?
Yeah. And just your personal reply.
I like them, but they use up an awful lot of characters.
Okay.
Depending on the emoji, you can use as many as 100 characters out of 140.
And a bulk texting. Okay. All right.
Yeah. When you do bulk. Yeah.
So when you say 140, your texting service is limited to old Twitter.
That's the way, as far as I know, all the texting services still are.
Okay.
Well, let me rephrase that. They're all limiting at that at this moment that I'm aware of for the one price. You can send more text, but they'll charge you more. So you get the 100. Now, one of the great things about the systems again is like the one I have it set up. The name is a maximum of 7 characters, and every once in a while, somebody gets cut off. But if I think about it, I can actually extend it for you individually. But I have to remember. But
you'd be in trouble in Hawaii.
What am I trying to say? The web address, no matter how long it really is, comes down to takes just 10 characters. So that's 2 big advantages. Like I said, if you looked at mine, I've got drafts out a month for some churches because I saw something that says this is coming up a month from now. Well, I'm going to plan on doing that week. Now, I'll probably change it when it gets there, but I've got the idea and what I have learned to save them as drafts, not scheduled, because I have on occasion let something go out that I really wanted to edit. Nothing bad, but something I could have been done better. So now I just save it as a draft.
So this is a more detailed question, but I think it's on target. We already have a Shrove Tuesday shrimp boil that we have done. It's always been outside facing. It's been a big deal. It's what everybody knows us for. So I already have that in place. So what I'm trying to do is add the layers to make it, because we've been missing this. So I already talked to the person that directs it and says, what free food can we offer for kids? And can we advertise that so that we're immediately hitting families? So what I'm hearing then is I need contact cards on the tables. I need maybe to add raffles or something similar that might give me another reason to collect information. I'm just curious, because we're right now in that time of planning for it.
Yeah.
It's a month away. I'll put it on Facebook. I'll advertise it on Facebook. We put it on our sign. We send it to the other churches because they all send their people out to it. So, as an example of something that's already there, I'm just looking to what do I do to pump this up?
Tell me about the space you're in. It'll be in.
It's in our parish hall. And so in the past, they have had music. This will be the first year we might be able to have music the first time we're returning to the parish hall.
Yeah.
So folks, but we've got a big commercial kitchen. So we're able to bring folks through to come through. It's all you can eat shrimp. So they can come through and fill up their shrimp. I'm going to suggest that we set up a separate buffet table for the free hot dogs and chips, and not really. So that can happen separately and nobody's policing that. We just had a funeral on Saturday. We had 90 people in that space. So we're able to probably, we're cycling through 100 people and usually have 200 to 300 people in a good year.
Okay. Well, the first thing, if you have the space, the first thing I would think about, and I don't know your church, so I don't know what you got going on. Uh-huh. Do you have things for youth or kids?
Oh, relative to our church right now, we are a small, very, very small church. We don't have youth at the moment. We're predominantly retired.
Okay.
And kind of hit hard by COVID.
Yeah. So, yeah. How about outside ministries?
We have a labyrinth, so I'm looking to do a monthly labyrinth walk separately.
Good.
So that's what I was just thinking about their Shrove Tuesday immediately.
Yeah. Well,
The
where I'm
listening,
going,
yeah,
where I'm
we have
going
a
is
big outdoor space.
okay. Where I'm going is one of the things is if you have something like, and I'll pick on ministries for example,
Uh-huh.
and you put a table off on the corner with a nice
Yeah.
banner, that says, probably not learn more about our ministries, but something that's intriguing. Then when people come over, you have somebody talk to them,
Okay.
and then say, if you'd like to stay in touch, here's how here's the card. Here's how you stay in touch.
Okay. So
The
I'm
other
thinking
thing
about
I would do,
launching.
and I'll be sending this out.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
stealing this from St. Thomas in Reedsville, North Carolina. They just with some heavyweight paper did some. I don't think I can show you very well, but basically did some triangular setups on the table,
Yes.
and they
Yep.
had plenty of extras. So when they got dirty, they got rid of them. But that included information about the church, and it
Okay.
also included the contact option. Both nowadays they didn't have it at the time, the QR code and the text to a
Right.
number.
Okay.
So that it's right in front of them. The other thing to do is, every once in a while, I don't know, 15 minutes, somebody gets on the megaphone, particularly if it's going to have music, and thank everybody for coming, thank the musicians, thank these. And by the way, if you want to know more, we'd love to keep you in touch with what's going on around here.
Okay.
Here's how you do it.
Okay. Great.
Yes, it's a commercial, but as long as you keep it gentle, I don't think people get them. And again, if somebody gets real upset because you've told them how they, they're not interested anyway.
They weren't interested anyway. That's fine.
So just, I don't worry about it. Yeah, I will send you out some stuff about that. I sent you something today about the 4 major activities. I don't know if you had a chance to look at it, but I really like, the 2 I really like are the blessing of the gardens and the burning of the palms. And I really like them because nobody else is doing them. And particularly, if I recall, you're in a relatively small city.
Yes.
Yeah. You probably have a weekly newspaper.
Mm-hmm.
They're dying. They're dying for articles. Chances are, if you check with that weekly, they got 2 people on staff.
Okay.
If you provide them with an article, particularly one about, I think the burning of the palms works even better because that's answering a question a lot of people have. And it's, if you phrase it as, we want to tell you what's going on here, but the blessing of the gardens, if you're primarily in a farming community, that might work, extend it.
Oh yeah. So
I have some liturgical resources, by the way, for that.
Okay.
Don't tell my bishop, but I never thought about the fact rogation days were the original blessing of the fields.
Right.
And that's in our occasional services.
Yes. Yeah.
I don't like it. I wouldn't use it, but it's there. I think there's some others that I happen to think are. It's just real. Anyway, I think it could be done. Take elements of it and do something better. But that's me. I'm retired. I don't have to worry about what the bishop tells me.
At a previous church, they would for a while, somebody taught me, and I just haven't tried it, but this might be the right time, that if you send a well-written, quote-unquote, press release to the newspaper about something, then normally they will pick it up.
Lost you for a minute there. I don't know if you still listen. You can still hear us, Mercedes, or not. But I just made a note. I'll send to everybody I have a write-up about good ways to do press release. And basically, particularly, again, for the weeklies, you write it as if it's going to be printed exactly that way.
Right. Okay. That's exactly what I said. Yeah.
And
okay.
We had one time. I don't even remember what the topic was. But anyway, I picked up the weekly newspaper the next couple weeks later, and I thought, wow, they used my photograph. And I started reading the article. I said, and they used my article. They didn't change a word. And so now I don't know what anybody's TV station situation is, but the burning of the palms is a very visual activity, particularly assuming you can do it outdoors. and it's particularly if you do it like in a Sunday afternoon or Sunday evening or something like that, the TV people are looking for something to fill. I won't guarantee it, but I also wouldn't pass up the opportunity. And nowadays most TV video is done by stringers.
Mhm.
So, they make a list of possible stories, and they have one or two of their own, but a lot of them are stringers that just bid on, I'll cover this story, and if you actually use it, I get paid type of thing. But yeah, news releases for unusual things. The burning of the palms, the blessing of the gardens. If Ashes to Go is new in your town, we got wonderful coverage first year we did Ashes to Go, because we were the first ones really. Others were doing it, but they weren't talking about it. So we got really good coverage. I don't think they came by. No, they didn't. They didn't come by during it, but I wouldn't have been surprised if they did. And had a good turnout. And they did it Sunday afternoon or early Sunday. I can't remember what time, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, something like that. And you have that few minutes of worship, spirituality, liturgics, and then you have fellowship. And one of the things I'll point out when I send you the thing on the gardens, and I'll parallel it with the blessing of the animals, is you want a reason for people to stay around an absolute minimum of 45 minutes. Hour is a better target, because you want time to get to know them. So you have to have more than a 10-minute service. So one of the things that, and like I say, I'll send you this stuff, but one of the things you can do is go to surrounding businesses that are garden oriented. The nursery, Lowe's, Home Depot, anybody like that. And a couple things. One, you ask them to give you something to give away. But also you ask them to come and make a little display and be there with you. And maybe you got a master, I'm brainstorming. You got a master gardener in the area. He'll do a 10-minute presentation on fertilizing in this part of the world. I don't know. But you hear where I'm going. Don't know your areas, but around here there is what do they call it? It's not the Farm Bureau, but it's something like that.
County agent.
Yeah, something like that. Anyway, I would ask them to come. We have a couple colleges nearby that focus on agriculture. I would ask them what would they like to come talk about or show or demonstrate or whatever. And again, depends on your space. But, if you had 2 or 3 different demonstrations going on and some handouts, like free tomato plants or something, people are going to hang around for a while. And you got a chance to chat with them and get to know them. And they leave there thinking, wow, this was a good hour I just spent. And although that's not likely to translate into, and I think I'll come to church tomorrow, what it will translate into is good feelings about this place, so that when other things happen, the impression is there's a good impression. I parallel this a lot with politics that we've just been through. The yard sign that just say vote for Joe Smith. They're not telling you really anything. What they're trying to do is build an impression that Joe Smith is there and is available and is a good person.
I'm seeing your idea there coupled with Earth Day.
Yeah, absolutely. It would be perfect.
And I'm seeing it tying into the creation care programs.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm liking this.
You could, again, what could you do? I think having somebody there talking about solar panels would be very appropriate.
Yeah, where we're at, as I said, we co-share with the Jewish congregation, and the facility we're on is on a larger property that's owned by Presbyterian Church. So we're kind of an interesting little cul-de-sac there. But there's also, with the Presbyterian Church owns, there's a community garden right next to our building. So I'm seeing kind of an interesting. I'm seeing this, your idea here in an interesting light right now.
Well, one of the things that we did is when we blessed the soil, the quote trade-off was we asked everybody to plant an extra tomato plant or something. And when the harvest started to come in, the first fruits came to the church to go to the food pantry. And then we talked a lot about the whole concept of first fruits and that kind of thing, that, these were people who had been starving for months. They hadn't seen anything fresh for months. And to take the first edible and give it to God is a pretty significant sacrifice. But, we didn't get buckets worth of, but the food pantries, generally, we walked in with a dozen tomatoes. They were happy.
Yeah. Yeah.
See,
I got to sign off, but I like that idea, and I look forward to your other stuff.
Yeah. The Earth Day is a good link.
Yeah. Now we've got our Lenten program coming up, and I got some really good ideas here about how to get the sign up thing going there, and we're going to do a Ash Wednesday, a Shrove Tuesday. So that's the other thing that's new for us, at least since I've been here. I think they used to do pancake supper a long time ago, but it wasn't a community oriented thing. We're looking to turn it into community oriented. We're contacting the local schools here to see if we can't get a kids jazz band to come and play, because we'd rather do that rather than hire a professional group. So taking a few of the nuggets of things I've heard tonight too to I like the table idea with kind of, here's information. Would you like information, sign up and all that? So
Shirley, you want to jump in about asking kids from school to play? Shirley was a music teacher for 31 years.
Yeah, excuse me. A lot of times there's a good high school level piano student that can come and play for you. And the other thing is, for special occasions, they'll know their friends. So maybe you could have a trumpet or a violin or whatever, whatever's around. And, you can contact local music teachers and they can recommend people.
Yeah, that's what we've done. My former parish, we actually had the high school jazz band. They're an award-winning jazz band, that they came and did our pancake supper every year. And we passed the calabash and raised money for them to help with their travels and all. So so that was where the idea came from. That I brought with me to get kids to come play.
One of the things I'll point out when you get my papers, whenever I get my computer back working so I can get them all again, I hate that I don't want to rewrite them from scratch, is that the best people to invite are your kids, and it doesn't have to be, maybe a grandchild or something. But one of the things I've suggested is make up little cards like they might use to invite somebody to a birthday party and hand them out to their friends. Hand out 4 or 5 to friends to come. And I'll bet you get some response from them. Now, again, what I always recommend is you do it on heavyweight paper, so the kid can't just crumple it up and stick it in his pocket and get lost.
Yeah.
Or it's harder for it to get lost. But they getting the kids. And again, if you get a band from the high school, chances are they're going to bring their friends.
That's what we're hoping, that there's some pulling into the community to the event.
And if you have anything going on, or you can think of anything, or okay, I'm brainstorming, but if I knew I was going to have 10 teenagers through the band and friends, I might find a way to say, hey guys, can I talk to you for a couple minutes? If we did something at night or Sundays or Zoom or whatever, what questions would you like us to address? What are your questions? Again, you may or may not get any significant response, but it proclaims that the church is interested in them. And that's something we're not good about proclaiming.
Well, that's good, because the other thing we're starting up is a youth-oriented program. We found a real need where we are. It's aimed at LGBTQ youth. We found that there's a real need for a safe space for the kids to come. So that's something that we can we can do and ask.
Even
And
if
it's
just
not,
talk it up.
it's not, we're not doing it a place where it's like, we're going to come and proclaim God to them. We just felt that, that there was a real bad incident here at our local school board meeting recently, that our vicar, or he's not a vicar, he's a priest in charge, and several of the other local clergy actually responded to with a letter to the editor in the local paper about, and that's prompted us like, what can we do to reach out? And our priest in charge's daughter is gay. And so we decided that one of the things we could do was provide a safe space for kids in middle school and high school to have a place to hang out. And so we're working on starting that out. So thank you. That's a good question. What are the things that we can do and answer?
And I don't know how to pull this off, and I certainly would not make it aggressive, force on them or anything. But they want to know the biblical. They want to have answers to the questions. So to find a way to have those discussions, and I'm brainstorming here. Wow, have a rabbi help you with that?
They're going to ask the questions when they come in and they see that tabernacle there.
Yeah, but I mean, to have a rabbi talk about Leviticus.
Yeah.
Wow, I want to be there. Call me when it happens. Let's see, where are you? Okay, Shirley will go there. She won't go to Minnesota. She's told we're not going to Minnesota.
Oh, come on.
As long as we're not headed to Minnesota, we're probably all right.
I'll go to Minnesota in the summer.
Minnesota in the summer is gorgeous.
I tried to get her to go to Montreal, and then she found out that when we were up there, they said it was not unusual for them to have 3 meters of snow on the ground. And Shirley, having been a math teacher after she was a music teacher, she knows what 3 meters is. She said, we aren't going.
I like snow on the mountains.
It's fine for her. I like snow. But anyway, I think I hadn't thought about that, but having that Jewish to be able to, and I'm brainstorming again, but I could see, and probably not in one night, maybe one night, I don't know, have a discussion from the Old Testament perspective, and then somebody else discuss it from the New Testament. Oh, wow. That would be fantastic. And,
our Lenten program is going to be focused on the Jewish, Muslim, and Christian faith programs. Yeah, so that's not aimed at kids, but the adults need it too.
But again, with your background, having the 2 congregations, and you telling, because again, one of the big things that the truly unchurched, not necessarily the previously churched, but the truly unchurched, is these arguments between faith, the hatefulness between faith. That's one.
That's why we're doing our Lenten program with the 3 faiths.
And it would be great. What's great about that is that would be so easy to slip into weeks that if somebody can only come 1 week, that's okay. But also that means you can promote each week independently.
Yeah.
You can say our theme for the 6 weeks is, and today we're focusing, or this week we're focusing on. And I'll tell you what I might do. Being small church, low budget. Maybe do some push on the week 1, and then ask during week 1 if anybody's willing to help us advertise week 2. Put $5 in the basket, because like I say, $30 can get you a whole lot of coverage.
Yeah.
And then week 3, week 4, week 5, One of the, and I think we're back to Carrie, what we were talking about at the beginning. One of our challenges is to make this effort a community effort, not a couple people effort.
Right.
So if we start saying, hey, and then I'm brainstorming again. If somebody said, hey, I'll fund next week. All right. Then we send them the printout we get that shows the effect, who this went to. And all of a sudden they're going, oh, hey, maybe this is worth the trouble. And that's, if you look at the professional fundraisers, that's what they do. I mean, whenever we send, we contribute to Donors Choose fairly often. It supports teachers. We get 2 or 3 emails back thanking us for our donation and pictures of what because the teachers suggest they need books or whatever it is. And we'll get a picture back of kids reading the books, and, that's, and the church misses that. We don't, there's such great models out and we're not using them. People want to know their money was well used.
What's your online newsletters for?
Yeah. The more personal the connection, even the better, and just, anyway.
Listen, I got to really go tonight. Thank you, Ken. We'll see everybody next week.
Okay, great. Thank you for
All right.
being here.